Welcome back and welcome to our political panel today. The Shadow Small Business Minister Bruce Billson with me here in the Canberra studio, and the Assistant Treasurer David Bradbury joining us from Sydney. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. Starting with you, David Bradbury. Were you given any advance notice of the Prime Minister's shock announcement yesterday?
No, I wasn't, and I'm not sure whether it surprises you or not, but I wouldn't expect to be told about these matters. And look, you can go back and have a look at decisions that previous Prime Ministers have taken in relation to election timing, you know, these are matters of prime ministerial prerogative. I think the Prime Minister, what she's done, she seized control of the political agenda in a year that was always going to be an election year. We all know that, in spite of the fact that so many people said we wouldn't make it to this point. And what she has now done is she's brought the debate and the focus of the debate very much to a contest between the propositions, the ideas being put forward by the two sides of politics. And I think that most Australians would welcome, for a change, a bit of scrutiny on the policies and the plans of not just the government but also the opposition. I thought the extraordinary thing yesterday was, and I see Tony Abbott, you know, this little pamphlet might as well be green because it's like a little fig leaf that he carries around to compensate for the fact that he doesn't have any policies. Turning up on TV yesterday, brandishing around this little glossy document that doesn't tell you anything about what they do in government. And meanwhile, when he had the chance to answer some questions, he did a runner. This is the bloke that wants to be the alternate Prime Minister. He said he wasn't caught by surprise, gets up in front of a camera and refuses to take any questions. I thought it was extraordinary, and frankly, you know, there are some serious questions that he has to answer about policies that they've already put out there that they haven't provided any detail about how they do it, and it's about time we started to scrutinise that. OK,
I'll come back to you to whether you should have been told or not, but a few accusations there pointed at Tony Abbott there, Bruce Billson. Was he caught by surprise?
Well, I don't know how the opposition could be caught by surprise when days earlier we released a blueprint, our real solutions plan for a prosperous and strong economy, a safe and secure Australia with commitments, our values, our directions, policy, it's there. And so I'm not sure how anyone could be caught by surprise. We're ready for an election whenever it is. We're good to go. And if we can earn the support of the Australian public, the coalition's good to govern. And contrast that with yesterday's presentation by the Prime Minister. A vacuous address, nothing about plans for the future, nothing about securing jobs other than her own. We get this announcement of an election and find out the only people consulted were the Greens and the Independents, just to show who's running the show. So, you know, David started the year with a bit of a crack at Tony Abbott when really our plans are on the table. You'll hear more about them today. Contrast that with a self-serving, self-interested speech yesterday and this stunt to create an election down the track when Simon Crean on another network this morning has belled the cat. He said the announcements between now and then will of course be viewed in the context of the election. So government resources being used by Labor as if it's their own money to campaign in this long lead-up period. Very self-serving, and contrast that with
are you telling me?
I will come back to you, David Bradbury, but I just want to ask you why was...
can't hear your
sorry,
question.
David Bradbury, I will come back to you, but I just want to ask, if Tony Abbott was so ready, why didn't he answer questions yesterday?
Well, Tony's got a speech at the National Press Club today. There'll be an abundant opportunity to ask questions about our policies and our plans. The tactical manoeuvrings of Labor designed to advantage their own interest to secure the Prime Minister's job, that's not where we're focused. We're focused on securing the jobs of Australians, 2 million new jobs in the next decade, doubling the growth in small business, taking cost of living pressure off families and businesses, strengthening our borders. They're our plans. As for the interesting, curious motives behind the Prime Minister's actions, perhaps that trust deficit's playing out again, and her repeated assurance that the election will be later in the year, no one believed that either. So who knows what the motive was.
OK, David Bradbury, your turn. And I want to specifically ask about that allegation that Julia Gillard will be using the full advantage, the full resources of government for an extended period of time, almost 8 months.
Oh, what a load of rubbish. What a load of rubbish. You know, what a load of rubbish. Is Bruce telling me that Tony Abbott didn't use any government resources when he launched his mini-campaign a couple of days ago? Is he telling me that when Tony Abbott has done his so-called tour around the place he's not using government resources? What a load of hogwash. let's call a spade here. This is an election year. It was always going to be an election year. For a lot of people, they will view everything that happens this year through the prism of an election. At least we now know where the date is. Can I make this point?
But Julia Gillard has the full departments behind her, the power of Treasury to look at figures, to look at policies and the like.
David,
and as Simon Crean pointed out this morning, everything she does will be in the frame of an election campaign.
David,
so does it give her an advantage?
What a load of rubbish. What a load of rubbish. The advantages that this government
Simon Crean say it
are
then,
the same.
David?
Well, I haven't seen what Simon had to say, and I'm not going to trust you.
That's pretty clear from what you're saying.
I'm not going to trust you, Bruce, in terms of what you're alleging he said. Can I make this point? That Mr. Rabbitt's out there saying, oh, we've got all these policies out there. Let me just give you one. He says, we'll repeal the carbon price. OK. Well, tell us, in repealing the carbon price, are you going to get rid of the increase in the tax-free threshold? Are you going to knock off the increase in superannuation we're delivering to people from 9 to 12%? Are you going to take away the payments we're giving to pensioners? Are you going to take away the payments we're giving to families? Simple questions. You actually don't even need to cost them. You've just got to be honest with the Australian people. David, these are the questions that you and your colleagues really, if you're doing your job, you'd be asking, rather than the sort of ridiculous commentary that's already commenced. You've been denied the opportunity to talk for 6 months about election timing. Instead, you want to spend 6 months talking about the decision to have it early. Let's get on with the debate about policies. That's what I'm looking forward to, and we've got a really strong plan and series of plans, and it's about time we started to expose some of the knucklehead economics that underpins what we're seeing come out of the coalition.
To be fair, we've only been talking about it for half a day, but Bruce Billson,
well, for 24 hours,
Tony Abbott,
every time I've turned on the TV.
Yeah, sure, but it's a completely unprecedented thing. We've never seen this before. It's quite interesting. And Bruce Billson, to David Bradbury's point, why doesn't Tony Abbott unveil exactly what he will do, rather than just say he'll get rid of the carbon tax? That has all sorts of repercussions for the budget.
Correct. You have a look at what's in that plan. We make it clear what we will do, and that is abolish the carbon tax. We've made it clear we'll deliver a reduction in income tax. We've made these debates that David's rehashing.
Yeah, but what about the other things that the carbon tax has funded?
In terms of the budgeting issues, I mean, what's curious is we won't actually know the actual final 12-13 budget position, if the same timing is applied for the last financial year as this, until after the election date.
But
so here's this
commitment.
budget surplus promise that was made 200 times, 50 times by the Prime Minister. We won't actually know how far off and how much nonsense that was until after the election date. So for David to say, well, where are all the detailed costings, where are all the hard numbers?
That's not
his
what
own
I'm saying.
Treasurer is saying that can't be done by the government.
Are you going to get rid of the tripling of the tax-free threshold?
It can't be done until we know what the financial position is. We've made it clear about tax reductions. We've made it clear about how we need to find savings to fund those. We've made it clear about the abolition of the carbon tax, taking cost of living pressures off families, helping the viability of small businesses. Has been absolutely brutally bashed by this government, and that's what we've mapped out. So we've made commitments. We've outlined our values. We've set out our directions. We've got a plan that puts real solutions before the Australian public, and all we get is this hysteria from David when the government won't live up to its own rhetoric about how to fund its plan. You had Peter Garrett on here before. He didn't mention the $3.9 billion cut from education in MyEFO. You haven't heard about the structural saves that are made in the budget, where 80% of them are new revenue. All we got out of the Prime Minister yesterday was a date for an election, self-serving announcement, the foreshadowing of tax increases, another crack on superannuation, all about what she's doing to save her jobs, not grow jobs and grow the Australian economy.
Well, David Bradbury, you are the Assistant Treasurer. Reports today that the government is considering taxing withdrawals on superannuation for the wealthier Australians, or at least those with a large pool of superannuation. Is that something that you can confirm or rule out?
Look, I'm not going to comment on speculation of that nature in the papers. What I will say is that the Labor Party is the best friend that superannuation ever had. In fact, we created superannuation. This country would not have compulsory superannuation if it was not for a Labor government. We are absolutely committed to super. It is in our DNA. Now, the questions
but can you rule out touching it? Because the coalition has ruled out touching it.
Well, you just failed to ask Bruce the question that I was putting to him about whether they would knock off the increases that we're putting in superannuation. We are actually increasing superannuation to working Australians. That's legislated. Now, what the Australian people need to ask, and the answer they need, is from the Coalition about whether or not they will knock off those legislated increases to superannuation. At the moment, I can only assume from what Bruce had to say today that they are going to rip them away. And that means that hard-working Australians all around this country...
That's just ridiculous, David. I'm being as courteous as I can while I'm hearing you talk utter nonsense. We've made it clear we won't be knocking that back. We've made it clear we opposed it.
Well, Joe Hockey said you'd get rid of all of the compensation.
Now that it's legislated, we've said that we don't want to create uncertainty for people very concerned about their retirement incomes, because all you've done is tinker with it. Tinker with it.
Well, Joe Hockey said...
You failed to rule out even further attacks on superannuation.
Joe Hockey said no mining tax, none of the things that are funded by it. So are you contradicting what Joe Hockey said? What's your position,
What I'm
Bruce?
clear on is that your Prime Minister
it's about time that some scrutiny came
further
to
messing
the
with
inconsistencies
superannuation
between your positions. What you've got to say is your position the Coalition position or Joe Hockey's? Because I tell you what,
we're running
I
out of
don't know
time,
what
but
it is.
David Bradbury, I did want to ask you specifically about Western Sydney. It is going to be a crucial battleground. Your seat of Lindsay is very much hanging in the balance, or at least on the margin at the moment and the current polls. How important is Western Sydney going to be, and what are you going to do to retain that seat?
Well, look, you know, my seat's always hanging in the balance. I take nothing for granted. I'd have a lot more hair if I had a safer seat. But I tell you what, when we look at Western Sydney, one of the things we'll be campaigning on is the things that we've delivered for our region, but also the quality of the team that we've got representing our party in the region. And I just want to make this point really strongly because...
make it quickly, please.
We have some outstanding candidates across Western Sydney, people like Michelle Rowland, Chris Bowen, Jason Clare, Julie Owens. These are people that are products of Western Sydney, lived in the region all their life, and they are the best that the region has to offer.
Okay, look,
now, I've got to say,
Bradbury,
I do take offence when people like Joe Hockey...
I've got to cut you off, and unfortunately I'm not going to give Bruce the opportunity to respond to that because we are out of time, but I do appreciate your thoughts this morning.
Western Sydney doesn't want more of the same, that's what they tell me.
And David Bradbury, thank you as well. Thanks for watching. More news coming up after this.